Language teaching in the 20th century. We have covered the 19th centuries starting from the 17th, 18th and 19th, and now we will look at the language teaching in the 20th century. A glance through the past century or so of language teaching gives us, ironically, a rather refreshingly interesting picture of varied interpretations of the best way to teach a foreign language. So you have seen that multiple methods were developed and how they also got discarded, or you can say they lost their popularity. So we had from the direct method, now we will move and see that what others method were introduced after that. The outbreak of World War II highlighted the needs of the Americans to be proficient in languages they can use with their friends, allies and enemies both. The direct method was providing this or facilitating this in bits and pieces, but then the army method was developed, which was later on, you can say, took a more formal shape in the form of audio-lingual method. Now in this method the emphasis was more on pronunciation and audio-visual aids were used for the learning processes, for the learning purposes as well. Then we have a Bulgarian scientist, Lazarov, who introduced Suggestopedia, another type of model for language teaching in which the students were to just sit comfortably in their seats and listen to classical music or get involved in the process of role play and so on. And when they are in that situation, they become suggestible. Now this model also lost its popularity, and actually it was not considered a very useful model. Followed by this model was the another method that was developed known as the silent way. Now in this method or in this model, what was the key aspect of this model was that the teacher was to remain silent. She was a silent observer. Now this particular model received a lot of criticism that this actually sort of decreases the importance of teacher in a classroom, and also the criticism claimed that this kind of approach is not useful for the students because students do require teachers' participation in terms of a guide, in terms of a facilitator. So after this we have the most popular model, which is known as communicative teaching. Communicative teaching is a popular approach. It's not even a method, it has become an approach, and it highlights the importance of communication, that language is to be used for communication purposes. Accuracy as well as fluency both are of importance to this particular model, and it requires that learners should use maximum language, or the opportunities should be given to learners, situations should be created for learners where they can use language for communication purposes. So now we will look at each one of these models individually. As schools of thought have come and gone, so have language teaching trends waxed and waned in popularity. They increased and decreased in terms of their popularity. Historically, pedagogical innovation has been the beneficiary of theoretical research, as witnessed by the influence of such research on trends in language teaching. At the same time, language classrooms and their innovative teachers and students have been laboratories of research that have informed theoretical stances as they have changed over time. So basically, the teacher, the students, they have served as laboratories for the experiments on the basis of which other models have been emerged and introduced. Audiolingual method, with its overemphasis on oral production drills, borrowed ideas from direct method, which is the predecessor of this model, but had essentially sprung from behavioral theory of learning of the time. So, as we have discussed that theories have contributed in the development of different methods, we have seen that this has its basis in the behavioral school of thought. The audiolingual method was rejection of its classical predecessor, the grammar translation method, by diminishing the need for metacognitive focus on forms of language. With a short time, however, with the increasing popularity of cognitive psychology, audiolingual method critics were advocating more attention to rules and to cognitive code of language, which is the cognitively processing of grammatical rules. Since the early 1970s, the symbiotic relationship of theoretical disciplines and teaching methodology has been continued to manifest itself. The field of psychology and other related disciplines have witnessed a growing interest in interpersonal relationship, the value of group work, etc. And the same era has seen linguists searching ever more deeply for answers to the nature of communication and communicative competence, and also for explanation of the interactive socio-cultural process of language acquisition. The language teaching profession has mirrored these theoretical trends with approaches and techniques that have stressed the importance of self-esteem, intrinsic motivation, and students' cooperative learning, etc. So, addressing this, we have seen that communicative language teaching, now a catchphrase for language teachers, CLT. CLT is an eclectic blend of the contribution of previous methods into the best of what a teacher can provide in authentic uses of second language in classroom. Now, the single greatest challenge in the profession is to move significantly beyond the teaching of rules, definitions, and other knowledge to communicative domain. A significant difference between current language teaching practices and those of, let's say, a half a century ago is the absence of proclaimed orthodox and best methods. We are well aware that methods as they were conceived of 40 to 50 years ago are too narrow and too constructive to apply to a wide range of learners. We saw that some methods were emphasizing oral pronunciation, while others were focusing on the grammatical rules, and some were on writing, some were on listening. But this CLT, which is communicative language teaching approach, covers all four skills. Every learner-teacher relationship is unique and every context is unique. So as a teacher, your task is to understand the properties of those relationships and context, especially when you are using communicative language teaching approach. To conclude, pedagogical trends in language teaching now spur us to develop a principled basis, sometimes called an approach, according to Richards and Rogers, upon which teachers can choose particular design and techniques for teaching a foreign language in a specific context.